So help Americans who don't have the same historical perspective as you do there, EJ. What does that look like in the current lay of the land with the huge trade deficits, the capital markets reacting the way that they are, and the possibility of a correction in the market in the form of a recession coming up?
Well, I think the reason the markets are reacting the way that they are has to do with all of the uncertainty that's been created. We weren't exactly sure what we were going to get for a while there in terms of these reciprocal tariffs. And then when they were finally rolled out, we learned that these actually aren't reciprocal tariffs at all. They're being called that, I understand. But these tariff rates don't really have anything to do with nations' trade or, essentially trade barriers, whether those are tariff or non tariff barriers. Instead, they're just based on the trade deficits that we have with these countries, and they're only based on the trade deficit concerning products, not concerning services. So, because the goalposts have really moved quite a bit here, firms and individuals just aren't really sure how to navigate this. They're not sure how this is going to play out. Some of that has to do with the uncertainty from the White House, where we seem to be getting some conflicting messages in terms of what the goals are, but also there's the element of uncertainty when it comes to how are foreign nations going to respond. You could have a very negative reaction, like what we've seen from China, where they're going to try to go toe to toe with us in a trade war, where we're each slapping tariffs on each other. And then you have nations like Japan right next door to China, but getting completely the opposite reaction, where they want to come to the table, they want to negotiate, they want to get to a point of more free trade, not less free trade. And I think that's probably the best outcome possible, because the alternative with these trade wars is where nations are slapping tariffs on each other. That hurts consumers because prices are going to tend to rise. It hurts employees because you tend to see less job growth. Sometimes people just getting outright fired as international trade and economies slow down. That's not to say that there are always well, let me put it this way. When it comes to trade wars, there are no winners, there are only losers, but not everyone has to lose the same. And so the high stakes game that Trump is playing here essentially is to say, we hold all the cards. And if anyone really wants to go toe to toe with us in a trade war, they're going to lose much more than we will. And so we're going to, by that calculus, we're going to assume that countries are going to come to the negotiating table sooner rather than later, that we can strong arm a lot of these nations into getting down their tariff and non-tariff barriers. I'm hoping that's still the strategy, and that the White House does not hyperfixate on the trade deficit, because with Stacey, with so many of these countries, the trade deficit is actually an investment surplus. The president, for example, was championing the fact that he got Hyundai to invest in building a steel mill in Louisiana. That is great news for that state. It's great news for the people there. That's a car company that is not only going to be making their cars there, they're even going to make the steel there. This is great news for America. It's going to mean more jobs here. It's going to mean faster wage growth. That's all great news. But we have to remember, where are the foreigners getting the money to make that investment? They're getting it through the trade deficit that we have with them. In other words, we're buying stuff from Korea. Korea then takes our money and turns around and invests it back here in America. That's a win-win. We actually want those kinds of trade balances where, again, we're buying products from them and they're investing here. That, again, that's a win-win. That's something we want to encourage, not discourage. And I'm hoping the White House is paying attention to those kinds of details.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.